everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of Back Alley Chat. I'm your host, Allie Severino, and I'm thrilled to have the incredible Dr. Samantha Robinson joining us today. She has a master's in social work and then received her PhD, which is in Sexology.
Yep.
Sexology.
Yep.
Awesome. And she's going to bring a wealth of experience about sexual health. And she's here to answer some questions that you guys have been dying to know. From mental health concerns to sexual well-being, she's an expert on it all. So buckle up and get ready for an exciting episode of Back Alley Chat. And as you already know, we love our sponsor, Quick Intel. Are you ready to level up your crypto game? Our podcast is proudly sponsored by Quick Intel. Quick Intel is on a mission to make crypto trading safer and more efficient. With their cutting-edge AI tools and proactive approach, you can say goodbye to scams and hello to well-informed investment decisions. Don't let uncertainty hold you back. Quick Intel's platform, built on the secure Arbitrum blockchain, empowers you to do your own research effectively and navigate the crypto space with confidence. Join the thousands of traders who trust Quick Intel to stay ahead of the game. Visit quickintel.io today and discover the fastest and most reliable information you need to succeed in the crypto world. Hi, Samantha.
What's up?
How are you?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited for today's episode. We'll see where the conversation goes, but I do have a list of questions that the girl I work with, like a whole office of women and one man.
Oh,
for
goodness.
Henry.
Yes.
I know, Pastor Henry. So we got lots of questions over here for you. But tell me a little bit about your history and like what drew you to at first becoming a clinician and then furthering your education in sexology.
Yeah, so it kind of fell in my lap at some point because in undergraduate college, I was studying biology. And then I thought I was going to be a genetic researcher, but I took a psychology course in my undergraduate studies, and the psychology professor was a sex researcher. So she like snuck the curriculum for sexuality in because it wasn't in the textbook. So I was just in awe with all the information that I had learned, like about the body, about sex education, about STIs, about male sexuality, female sexuality, sexual orientation, literally everything.
Right.
And I had so many questions all the time that she would make time for me after class to ask. And then I did all of my papers and all of my projects on anything sexuality that I could in undergraduate. It was kind of like the thesis was a big deal. And I switched my major to psychology and I did a bunch of stuff in sexuality. Like I had an internship at a sex toy shop.
Wow. That was like an internship that they were cool with?
It was like credit. Yeah.
Wow.
It was interesting that they had that. But yeah. And then I did like some research studies with the professors on like sex ed curriculum. And then I wrote all my papers on whatever I could about sex.
What was your dissertation about? Just wondering.
So my dissertation was on, I created an evidence-based curriculum for moms who had children who were sexually abused.
Oh, wow.
Or non-offending caregivers. Most of them were moms. So I kind of made it specific for moms, but it could be expanded to other caregivers.
Right. Okay. So you get this.
So then I did that. Yeah. And then, I had to make a decision on what I was going to do because I didn't realize you couldn't do anything with a bachelor's degree. So then I worked for a treatment center for substance abuse as like a summer tech job to make a little money. And so everyone mentioned, oh, you should go to social work school.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, let me look into it. And since you didn't have to take any tests or like anything that was like academic related testing, because I'm a terrible test taker, I was able to get into social work school pretty quickly and easily.
I was at FAU?
Yeah, I went to FAU. And then Dr. David Wolsifer, who was a sex therapist, he's a professor. He's done like everything that I thought was interesting. So I kind of like befriended him and we went on this journey together of like discovering myself as a therapist, and I took all of his classes and he mentored me and he suggested that I get my PhD in clinical sexology. And so I graduated social work school and I was like, let me wait until licensure. Let me do the 2 years or whatever it was and take the test and all that stuff. But then we were doing like networking And I met the president of the school that I went to, and she like did an impromptu interview that I didn't realize was an interview. And she's like, "Can you start classes next week? We're starting our next cohort." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, sure."
Like as a professor?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And I didn't like have to do anything. Like she like loved me so much that it was like, "Oh, okay, cool."
So the stars really did align for you to end up probably where you were supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because I was going to do I was going to transfer to FAU. I just got my associate's degree last year. I've been going to school part-time forever. It feels like forever. And so I was going to get my bachelor's in social work, but how long it's already taken me, I'm like, what am I going to do with a bachelor's in social work besides be poor forever? Like, I don't want to do that at all. And so I'm doing my bachelor's in business, but I always figured, you know, if I wanted to, I could go get my MSW, but I don't know if people understand how much time it takes to
Oh yeah, there's a lot of time involved.
And learning and papers and field work, right?
Yep, and there's misconceptions that you can't make money, but that's not true. You can expand
With
social
the masters,
work.
you can kill it.
Yeah, but also you can expand social working and make it what you want it. Like there's people who are social workers who do coaching, or there's people who are social workers who do HR. Or people who do social work and they do lobbying or politics stuff. And then there's the clinicians, you know, the therapists who have private practice or in the field for, you know, like the community and all of that stuff. But
those are great. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's a passion-driven field for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. And so like all of this fell into my lap, and I love like working one-on-one with people. And I thought that was the impact that I wanted to make, was like, and the mission that I had and the question that I had that I wanted to help with is, why didn't we learn about any of this stuff earlier? And how can I help? So the part that I play a role in is helping people heal from the like traumatic messaging that people say about sex and unleashing shame and all of that stuff. But then a year ago, I realized that it doesn't feel big enough. Like I feel like there's more to the story. There needs to be more experts or people who learn about sexuality to talk about sexuality, because you don't have to have your PhD to talk about sex, but like learning the true facts about sex and like really like being courageous enough to share about sex. And so then I was like, okay, well, how can I like be helpful and contribute to the community of people who are like shifting into talking more about sex and things like that? And so I thought, oh, well, maybe I could do my own thing and have my own business. And that's really challenging with a full-time job.
Yes.
Especially working at like the government and in healthcare and all of that stuff. So I do what I can, but my social media is really where I want to like be known as someone on social media who can help. And so,
where can people find you on social media?
I'm focusing on Instagram right now. My handle is at Dr. Sam Robinson _.
Cool.
I'm getting back into it as far as like putting out more content and things like that. But I really do love sharing information, and it just changes people's perception. Like you don't need to go to therapy to change your perception. And so that's what I've learned, especially as a sex therapist. Most of the time people come in for a short time and they're looking for knowledge. They're looking for education. They're looking for something to compare their life to, because no one talks about it.
Right.
So
what are some of the misconceptions? Because this was actually a question I had from one of my friends. He asked, like, what are some of the misconceptions that maybe we learned in school, or like the sex ed overhaul that might needs to happen for young people to be better educated on sexuality and maybe not feel so ashamed about it or whatever. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions? It might be a hard question that you see.
No, that's okay. It's a lot.
Yeah,
but the first one that comes to mind is that like sex is a taboo thing. Like you're not supposed to talk about it. You're like, if you do it at a certain age or before marriage, it's bad. And you know, there's no space to talk about it, but really, truly, most people are sexual beings, regardless if they have like a higher sex drive, a lower sex drive, no sex drive. Like there's sexuality in all of us. And, there is the opportunity to have spaces to have conversations. Like, you don't need to share the dirty details of your whole sex life, but to ask questions, to vent, to process, to share like at least a little bit allows us to compare like what our life is and to find out what normal truly is, which a lot of things are more normal than we think they are. That's like another piece. Like, so I don't know specifics, but like a lot of people think that their specific situation isn't normal. So like, let's take fantasies, for example. A lot of people think that their fantasies are not necessarily normal. If we dive into a specific fantasy, a lot of people actually have fantasies about consensual non-consent situations, which is kind of like a rape scene.
Right.
But it's not, it doesn't mean that you want to be raped. It's a power control thing. That type of thing turns people on as far as like the dynamic piece of it, the like uncertainty, the novelty, things like that. So like another piece of fantasies that people have shared with me is that they have fantasies about like, maybe they identify as a straight person, but they have fantasies about the same sex. And that doesn't mean that you identify as somebody who is in the LGBTQ plus community. It can, if you start to explore that and kind of uncover certain things about your life. But just because you're thinking about something or having a fantasy about something doesn't mean anything about you, except for that particular thing turns you on.
Right. And maybe there's a deeper reason as to why, not just the fantasy itself.
Yeah. And looking at the symbolism of all of it, more like if it's like, I don't know, like if you're having fantasies about bondage, it could be more about like letting go of control. And maybe you're in a really dominant work life, like you have a masculine schedule and you like work all the time, and then all you want is to release control and relinquish decision making in the bedroom.
Sure.
And so, you know, like that's just one example. There's so many, but
so I saw that you do like these workshops where you work on women, and like it's like a kink workshop.
Oh, I had
What is that? Well, how does that work?
So I'm starting to do more workshop-y type things.
Cool.
They're kind of like programs, but I like to call them workshops because we're actually doing stuff in there, and it like you take away other than just information. You're doing stuff, you're reflecting, you're processing. So I had a workshop called Healing Through Kink, and that was a workshop because kinky people have a really amazing opportunity, or you can use kink as an amazing opportunity to heal from trauma or from more terrifying situations, or to build your self-confidence, because there's the piece of trauma that it's not just in the brain, it's in the body as well. And so therapists are talking more about somatic practices for healing, which means like more body-based stuff. So you don't just talk your trauma out all day long. You probably maybe implement meditation or implement yoga, or maybe doing some dance or weightlifting or something like that.
In the spirit of the trauma, like, so you'd be like doing it for a reason. Like if you're doing yoga, you're actively thinking.
Yeah. And you're moving the energy in the body.
Cool.
So in kink practices, you have ultimate control. So like if you were to utilize kink to heal from a traumatic situation, you don't have to replay the whole scene in the same exact way that the trauma happened, but you have the opportunity to give consent. You have the opportunity to write the narrative and change the narrative. And then you have the opportunity to act it out. And then when you're acting it out, you have the opportunity to stop it when you're feeling uncomfortable. And it's just a safe way to explore yourself.
And when women do this and they feel comfortable with it, and they come in nervous, or like,
of course.
Yeah. How do you break the ice? What do you?
Well, anybody who comes and sees a sex therapist or comes to a workshop is always going to be nervous.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like the biggest struggle with like being on social media is, how do I put this information out there in a way that feels safe for people to listen to and come and ask questions to me? Because I am a safe person, and I have to be my whole self in order to do that. So like in order to break the ice, I kind of normalize their situation where it's like everyone's going to be nervous because this isn't something that we do.
Yeah.
It's a new thing. We're changing the way that we think. We're changing the way that we share. We're changing the way that we talk and about sex and sexuality and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So definitely, like, it is hard. And then the thing that I also do for people is I let them kind of like process what they're afraid of, and then I challenge that. So I challenge some of their thought processes, not to change their mind or to change their belief system, but to give them another perspective that they could latch on to if they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's see. I want to get through some of these questions. So do open relationships work, and are they healthy? I guess exploring alternative relationship structures or sexual practices might be of interest to some people, but they might be hesitant because of societal norms. So is it healthy? And if it is healthy, how could they navigate that conversation?
Yeah, so I want to start with the societal conversation of monogamy.
Perfect.
So we are taught that monogamy, which is one person, you're in a relationship with just one person forever, is the way to go. Like, it's the healthiest way. It's the way. It's like advantageous in some way. It started when the agricultural people were doing all the things. Yeah. So I think any type of relationship is healthy if you have the foundation of communication and honesty and trust. And, that's a monogamous person asking the question, right? Because it's hard to conceptualize something that we think is like different. So I would challenge them and ask kind of like, well, what about it doesn't feel healthy? Mm-hmm. And then the majority of the time is, people in open relationships are just cheating on each other or are just hooking up and they're not actually connected, when that's actually the opposite of all of that stuff. Like, I've learned from people who are in open relationships. I'm in a monogamous relationship, by the way. I've learned from people about like how really specific you need to be in your communication, about how nonviolent you need to be, about how to set things up and front load people, which means like you tell them everything up front and then you set your boundaries and then you go from there. People in open relationships talk about all of this way before they even try to explore it, right? And to see if it fits. Mm-hmm. And then there's always the like orientation to it. So some people are oriented more towards monogamy. They feel most comfortable and like safe. Take away all of the thoughts about society and sit with your own belief. Mm-hmm. So some people are oriented and feel more safe with monogamy despite like the society thing. Other people are more oriented to open relationship styles, polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, things like that, because they orientally have a pattern of a high capacity of love and want to explore that in other ways. Wow. So it's kind of like sexual orientation, where like you have your pattern of people you're attracted to. Mm-hmm. We don't talk about relationship orientation. People are oriented to certain ways. And so people who are oriented more towards non-monogamy or open relationships struggle sometimes with monogamy because they feel like it doesn't align or doesn't feel right. And then I want to say that I had a conversation with somebody fairly recently, like maybe 2 or 3 days ago, where all they were saying, like, it's just cheating and that type of thing. Cheating to me is betrayal. So you're going outside of the expectation of the relationship. Typically, monogamous people don't talk about expectations. They're not up front and most of the time and say, like, I don't want you to text a female person. I don't want you to be friends with other guys. I don't want you to go out to lunch with the other gender. Like, little things. Like the expectation is don't cheat. But then people emotionally cheat or don't physically cheat.
Which I think can be even worse sometimes.
Right. They
really,
don't talk
if you're
about
getting that
that
deep with another person, I'd rather you just sleep with a random person instead of like...
So
Building that bond,
there's
kind of.
always risk
Wow.
for cheating in all types of relationships, like because the expectation in, like, let's say someone emotionally cheating and not physically cheating, that wasn't talked about.
Right.
So they're like, oh, well, I'm talking to this one person, but I'm still with you. I'm still physically with you. I'm still mentally with you. I'm still emotionally with you. But like, this is over here. And like, it's worse off because that expectation wasn't talked about at the beginning.
Right.
So people who practice alternative relationships or open relationships have all of these conversations, get really clear on their boundaries. And if anything happens that are outside of those boundaries, then yeah, it's cheating.
Yeah. And I guess because I guess some people probably decide to be more open later in their relationship when things kind of start to get a little stale, which was another question I had, which is kind of what tips do you have for individuals who are getting older and are in long-term relationships to like keep that fire alive? Because I think that is when some people start thinking about, well, maybe we'll start swinging or maybe we'll incorporate X, Y, and Z. And any advice for them?
Yeah. So there's different ways that people go into the open relationship thing. And definitely a lot of people who are in long-term relationships get tired of the same thing because a lot of people like the adventure, the novelty, the excitement of new things. And when you're in a long-term relationship, you're not new. But what you can do is do new things. So it doesn't have to go to the extreme of swinging in other people, but it could go to like different positions or different places or different conversations or adding toys. And so there's an exercise that I love to do with people called the sex quadrant exercise, where you kind of get really clear on what you want more of and what your desires are, what you want less of. Like, let's say you get bothered by the type of breathing that they do. I don't know. And you can deal with it and tolerate it, but it's like kind of like, I can go without it. Right. And then you get curious about what your desires are, your fantasies are, and really thinking about, can I do this in real life? And then you talk about your hard no's, like, absolutely not. Like, no, we are never exploring this in our world. And so having a couple do that exercise on their own and take time to reflect and then seeing what overlaps. And then if there's something like, let's say my partner wrote down that I didn't think of and that I was curious about, I would then add it to my curiosity list,
That's cool.
So yeah.
So that's a thing that you have couples do. Do they do it? So they do it separately and then they come together and read what they both wrote down?
Yep.
Or, oh, that's so cool.
And
what
then,
a great idea.
Yeah. And then another piece is mindset, like really all about, you're in it for the experience. So what can you think about that brings that like play energy, that like fun and exciting? So you can do all the things, but are you in the mindset of that? So incorporating play, like the energy of play is like exciting and light and like, you don't have to like role play, but like bringing in that like
having
experience.
fun together and bonding and just being close with your partner, right?
Yep. And then getting rid of those thoughts or even looking at the thoughts of like, why am I bored? Or what is going on in my relationship that I am bothered by? Or like a lot of things that are outside of the bedroom end up being inside the bedroom too. Like it's like a parallel process.
Well, if you're fighting with your partner all the time, like I know people who maybe they don't like certain habits that their partner has or health issues or whatever it is. And that stress comes with you all day, and then so much time goes by. And if someone's done that, how do they go back? How do they fix it?
I would suggest like at first really getting clear on what you're thinking, like get really clear, like journal it, voice record it, like put it out somewhere that isn't in your mind.
Okay.
Because then you can do something about it. You can either approach your partner and share what you're thinking and really set the stage for that conversation because it could be hurtful. Yeah. We're inevitably going to hurt people, but what we can do is buffer ourselves and have like an aftercare plan for after the conversation. How you can...
Like what?
Like hugs, kisses. If you need self-care time, then do that. But like something to close the conversation with.
Right.
Or you can have like an opportunity to see a professional either together or separate and like it's hard to get clear on your own. Like that's really where it comes from, is getting clear on really what you're thinking and what your thoughts are and how you feel. And then once you're clear, you gain the confidence to share that information. Because if you can't talk about it, then it's going to keep persisting.
Right. And I think maybe, and especially for men, I think if they have to approach their female partner and say that they're unhappy, maybe sexually or something, they're really scared that the girl is just going to feel terrible or have these reactions. Is there any like way that they could go about these conversations in a way that is less hurtful to their partner?
Yeah. And that happens with either person who's talking about a concern, or even trying to say, hey, like I'm noticing that you aren't exercising as much.
Right.
And everyone has a reaction, whether it be an outward reaction where you get really mad or an inward reaction where you completely stonewall and stop talking and all of that. But in order to approach a hard conversation, what I try to do personally is first I try to schedule it or share with my partner, hey, I want to talk about XYZ. When are you able to?
Right.
Because then it creates this box around the conversation where you can't talk about it beforehand. You have it, and then you can't talk about it after unless you follow up.
Okay.
So it helps the people who are avoiding the conversation to feel safer because it's like, okay, we're going to get this done and then that's it.
Right.
And then it prepares the people who are anxious so that then they can regulate and calm themselves down and approach the conversation appropriately. So for me, I'm an anxious person and I have an anxious attachment.
Yeah, someone's like, hey, we got to talk later. I'm going to be like, about what?
Yeah. So like,
what do you want to talk to me about?
So front loading is the best thing to do. So like, hey, I want to talk about our sex life. I want to share with you my desires. I want to share with you what I've been thinking about adding to our sex life, or, you know, even for the people who are like, I want to talk about our sex life because I feel really sad or rejected or abandoned from our sex life. Like saying it all up front first. When are you able to have this conversation with me? And then you schedule it, and then you set the ground rules. Like this sounds so formal, but really it helps. Where you set the ground rules of like respecting each other, whatever your ground rules are, like respecting each other. If one of you gets really emotional and the other person sees it, then they could call you out on it. Or if I'm feeling really emotional, I have to pause, you know, I'm bad at catching myself in emotional reactions. So my partner will call me out on my emotional reactions.
What does that look? So like if you're maybe feeling a negative way about something he's saying and you go to react, how does he stop you in a way that doesn't make you more upset? Well, I guess, you know, you're open to it, but some people aren't.
Yeah, no, like
that.
It's important to be open to anything that happens in these conversations.
Yeah.
So for me, it isn't perfect yet, but he'll tell me that he'll tell me to pause and he'll tell me to go calm down and we'll come back. Or he'll even say, I don't want to have this conversation right now because you're in a reaction or emotional. Right. And
what does your person do, by the way, for work?
He is a chief operating officer at a non-for-profit. He has his license in mental health counseling.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I was wondering. I was like, I wonder if it's two clinicians here that are okay.
And it doesn't make it any better.
No,
because there's actually, we were just talking about this the other day, where I think we both experience. I'm talking about my own experience, but I'm sure that this experience of shame is amplified because we are supposed to know what we're doing, or we're like, oh, we should know that by now. But I guess there's like a quote from a philosopher that says you can't heal thyself or something. But I see a therapist and a coach. Like, oh yeah, I'm like all over the place with like myself because that's how I can show up better for everybody. Right. And it's fun. Like I enjoy my healing journey now because I have control ultimately of who I am, and like I don't have to have anyone else take my power, whether it be trauma, people, society. But I'm still working on it. Obviously, it's a lifelong journey.
Right.
But as far as like getting back to that like conversation thing, setting everything up front and then sharing from the perspective of how you feel rather than attacking the person and saying, well, you're doing this. That freaks me out when someone says you're doing something that I don't like, because then like I then internalize that as, well, what does that mean about me? Right. So instead of like pointing out the person, you can point out the behavior and say, well, I feel really angry when you ask me for permission to give me a kiss. I don't know. Right. Or like, I feel really upset when you say things that are, scenarios are really hard for me to come up with. I have way too much. So I feel really upset when you say something about yourself that isn't true. Or I'm angry when you put words in my mouth about how I feel. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, like...
Right. This thing makes me feel this way.
Yeah. And then reminding, like if you have a person in your relationship that needs that reminder that it is not about you, it's about the behavior and like the openness for feedback, then you let them know. So I need the reminder, because I'm an anxious person,
right,
that it's not about me and my quality of who I am. And I also am working on that, like becoming more aware of who I am and confident about that, rather than like being in a place where I have to do a certain thing because someone told me to do that. So like that, I feel like that's like the I'm not good enough syndrome is literally everyone's journey.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like,
That's good. That's
I feel
good to
like
know.
it's like everyone's journey. Like a lot of people do feel not good enough. And that's because society's messaging.
I was just going to say, it's so hard when you see all these perfect people all day and perfect lives, to feel like you're never doing enough or getting enough done. I think that's super common. And a question I had for you actually was, you know, young kids right now, how they're being affected by seeing this and kind of the sexualization of them so young, just because these kids look so old. I don't get it. Like they're 13 and they look like how I did at 20. So how do you think that's going to like affect them, or...
So I think
advice you have for parents that have kids that age? Because a lot of my friends have kids that are from 8 to 15. So what do they do? How do they talk to them? Like, what's up?
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, no one teaches us how to do any of that stuff.
Right.
But I want to.
That's why I wanted to ask.
A lot of people think that kids are asexual, but they're actually sexual beings in progress, because we are growing up into our sexuality, into our womanhood, manhood, or themhood, or like adult. We're going from childhood to adult.
Right.
And we all have these like things that we want to, or have to, or desire to accomplish in XYZ ages. But like a lot of people do think that they're sexualizing children, but it's not that. It's like the media now is talking more about sexuality, which is great. But people feel nervous because they don't want their kids to be impacted by that.
Right.
Good example is the Disney movies that have like the non-binary character or a gay character, and people think that their kid's gonna turn gay. But that's not true. Like no one's
that's
shoving
not how being gay works, right?
one's shoving any agenda on anybody or anything like that. It's just an opportunity for exploration.
Right.
But as far as like parent talking to kid, I think it's so important. I wish maybe I should create a workshop, but like
there you go.
Like I just had an idea, but like, so learning about child development is super important. And like the layman's terms of like when crushing starts, when you start to have sexual thoughts.
Do you know how old that is when crushing starts? Because I remember having crushes, many of them very young.
Yeah. Well, so like crushes, like innocent platonic crushes are super young. But like when you start to sexualize things, it's around 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you don't like have the goal
right.
of sex.
Yeah. Like you probably don't really know what it is.
No, the sexualization, like crushes and oh my God, I want to hold their hand, whoever it is. And so like at young ages, like maybe 2, 3, 4, you start talking about learning how to say no, and your body is your body. And the only people who can see your body are whoever is on your list, like mom, dad, siblings, possibly if you're bathing together, doctors, and then you say no to everyone else because that is prevention of sexual abuse.
Wow. Yeah.
Then at puberty starting earlier, I think. So like I would maybe start this at like 7 or 8 where you learn terminology, like teach them terms of what puberty is. Like what is puberty? What does that look like for you? And each biological sex is different.
Right.
And that this is coming. And that it is a maturation of our bodies and it's exciting. And, instead of like saying
scary,
I personally got my period really early and I thought I was going to die because I didn't have the conversation. And now every time I bleed, I'm thinking to myself, like it comes up every time I start my bleed, I'm going to die. But then I have to revamp that.
Right.
And like, it's taken so long. Like I was 10 years old and now I'm 31. I'm still struggling with some of that. Like, oh my God, you can prevent that and you can celebrate puberty.
Right.
And then if you want to talk about relationships, you don't have to talk about the dirty deeds of sex, but you can talk about what relationships are, what healthy relationships have.
What do they have?
Communication, trust, honesty, and I think integrity.
Okay.
So like, are you able to communicate? Are you able to hold space and like trust that person? What does trust look like? It depends on the person. But for me, trust looks like integrity. Like you do what you say you're going to do. You don't shame me if I have a random thought or an idea that doesn't make sense or, and I'm trusting that I can keep like certain things with this person, like a friendship.
Yeah. To feel safe.
Yeah. And then, honesty, like having honest conversations, being honest about how you feel, like your actions are the same as what you're saying, that's how you build trust.
Yes. And for these, well, keep going with the young ladies and men.
Yeah.
And
so
boys
then, you start having conversations about that. And then, people look at the internet. So you can ask your kids questions like, what have you seen on the internet without shaming them?
Right.
And asking them if they've seen explicit adult content. And if they have, that's when you teach them about that. And, it's better to ask them what they're exposed to because then you can kind of guide the conversation.
Smart.
Per my opinion. But if they haven't seen any of that and they're starting to go on social media, I would definitely have that conversation where there's people out there, there's an industry out there, and here's what sex is. And, teaching them what sex is to you because sex is a different experience for everybody. And then allowing them to explore what sex is for them. Which if I were to conceptualize sex or like make a 1-sentence statement, I would say that sex is a connecting experience.
Okay.
Where you are allowed to feel connected to the person that you're having sex with, whether it be a quick one-night stand or if it's a long-term relationship. You have your feelings, you own them, and you sink into the experience of the pleasure and the juicy and the hot and the sexy and the steamy. And also you have this realm of exploration of your emotions.
Right.
And you're allowed to have it all, no matter what type of relationship you have.
And how do you explain, my little sister and young ladies her age, she's about 16, 17, when you're that age in school, all the boys want to hang out with you, right? But you might not want to hang out with all the boys because And maybe you think of it differently as a sex therapist, but I see it as like dangerous and maybe you might regret it and anything can happen. And these boys are also 16 and they're so stupid, in my opinion. So how do you keep them like safe, but still allow them to explore and to be young people? But
I think,
or is it not even possible? They have to feel the heartbreak.
No, I think that like there is the heartbreak and stuff, but like the buffering of like love around that child is going to keep them safe. They're going to make better decisions. Like I said this recently where I fucking wish that someone talked to me about this because I would have made better sexual decisions.
Wow.
I made terrible sexual decisions because I thought that was the way.
Right.
I thought that I had to have sex with a man so that they can love me. And then they would ask me out. Like all throughout college, I had sex with people because I thought I had to, because I wanted them to be in a relationship with me. I wasn't looking for like the whole like hookup thing. I'm really a committed person. Like I like the relationship side and like the intimacy and connection.
Right.
But like I'm one of those people. And then I thought I had to have sex because like, and my needs weren't considered. Like I had to please the man. That's the whole thing. Like I had to please the man. And if the man didn't come, then I'm a worthless piece of shit.
Right.
And then I really felt like, really truly felt that like sex was the thing that kept people together.
Oh, wow.
And like, okay, so if I kept having sex with the one person that I like, then maybe they're going to stay with me and they're not going to think about anybody else. And then they're going to ask me out eventually. Like I had this one situation where that was the whole belief, but it's not true. Like sex is an enhancement of an experience, like your relationship. Sex is fun, and you don't know someone's intentions unless you ask.
Right.
So, I learned that sex isn't necessarily the thing that breaks people apart, that my needs do matter, and that if someone doesn't have an orgasm, it doesn't mean anything. Like it just is. Like sinking into the experience is much more fun than having the goal of an orgasm. Right. But also the blue balls situation is interesting for men. So if they don't ejaculate, it doesn't mean anything about you. Everyone, you're in charge of your own orgasm.
That's good.
So
personal responsibility.
Absolutely. So they are responsible. Like while you're the catalyst, like let's say I'm having sex with my partner.
Okay.
He is in charge of his own orgasm. He is in charge of sinking into his own experience. I'm the catalyst of that because it's, stimulation or some like feelings and doing all the things. But I can't make someone have an orgasm.
Right.
I can help facilitate an orgasm. And that's another misconception, like you said earlier, where like if you don't orgasm, then you're a bad person, or if it's a bad experience, or it's not good enough, but it's not true.
Yeah. And so you really believe that if we educate young men and women, that they'll make better choices and be probably happier, maybe have less traumatic things happen to them.
And then tell you.
Right. Tell us what's happening so we're aware of what's going on in their lives and can be close with them and try to help them through whatever happens because of it. Because bad things are going to happen. You're going to sleep with a guy and he's going to leave you like right away. I think that's going to happen almost every girl, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like I think that's just how maybe men are built a little bit when they're that age. And I had a question. So I was talking to my coworkers and they were talking about how they've gotten older. They've had more sexual libido for women. So I was wondering, what age does that happen for women? And is it the reverse for men? Do men lose libido as they get older? Or is that not even true? Is there not such thing? Or
yeah, no. I feel like that's so common with women because I feel like as a 31-year-old, I finally know who the fuck I am and what I want. So that allows me to have more libido. Like I just have
you feel good in your skin.
I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm like, because I'm confident now. And then, like the hormone situation, there's no rise in estrogen. Like, I think it's more about the confidence piece of who you are. Because like at 25, or 26, your brain is fully done growing. It's all done. Like, you don't have the remaining stuff left. And once that's in place, you have like these period of years where it's like 26 to 30, where you're like finally feeling integrated into who you are. And then at the moment I turned 30, I was like, oh yeah, now it's good. Like, like it just,
everyone says that about being 30, that it's like
so interesting. And it's developmental too. So like there was this theory of development from this guy, Erickson. And at that age, like 30-ish, it was like 20 to 20 something. There's this intimacy versus inferiority task where if you are intimate with yourself and are intimate with your relationships and intimate with your life and like really understanding that piece, you feel confident and able to navigate the rest of your life. And then there's the inferior side where if any of that didn't happen, you feel kind of inferior to the rest of your life, and like just like this big existential crisis of like, I'm not good enough. So I think that that's what happens is like that piece of development and also like the confidence in who you are and the brain finished growing and all of that stuff. With men, as you age, testosterone goes down, and testosterone is a huge driver of sexuality. And also bodies change and certain parts and certain things stop working or don't work as efficiently. So like for men, there might be an increase in erectile dysfunction or delayed ejaculation, things like that. And with females too, there's like body changes like menopause and not as much vaginal juices flowing and, like just a bunch of change. So there's that piece of it where with men, it's like it goes down not only because of testosterone and body changes, but I also think there's that mental, emotional component of like, wow, like I don't work as much, I don't work as efficiently, and I feel badly about that. Like that my manlyhood is over, so therefore my sex life is over. But that's not true.
No.
Like you can navigate literally anything about sex. Like literally you can be creative. Like there's props and toys and things, like there's pills, but I'm a whole believer in a holistic approach. And then if you need the medicine, then you go get it.
Right.
We don't talk about penis pumps often, like you can get a penis pump if you have erectile dysfunction and use that, put a cock ring on, that stays the way it is. And then when you're ready to finish, then you take the cock ring off and you're good.
Wow.
Most of that works. Then there's also, like that medicine, Viagra, I think Cialis, and things like that. But like also for women, there's things to do too.
Like what?
There's props like dilators. Like if you're feeling tight, you can like dilate, which is like stretching yourself out a little bit more. Like there's different sizes and you insert the object and there's the vibrators and things like that to help facilitate orgasms more efficiently. There's chairs, like special sex chairs for people who like have more pain or disabilities and things like that.
Oh my God, people with disabilities have sex. Wow.
They have hot sex. And then
this.
also sex is in the mind. Sex is in the brain. So like you can
That's
train
why it's
yourself.
popping in those nursing homes.
Yeah.
What's going on over there? They're like, this is it. We're about to meet whoever it is at a gate, and this is what we got. And they're all having sex. So does it magically come back when you turn 80?
No, not necessarily. I think like they
don't care anymore.
And they
so
navigate it differently.
They feel
mindset.
better.
It's
right.
the mindset.
Of fun, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And excitement and all of that stuff.
Yeah. There was a period of time where the STI rate was very high in nursing homes. And I was doing a study on that in undergraduate where it's a mindset thing. Like they're like, I want to have fun for the rest of my life. And then also I'm going to die soon. So what does an STI matter?
Right.
And it comes with the territory sometimes, like it's kind of like getting a cold. Like if you're around someone who who has a cold,
Sure.
you're
My
likely
boyfriend's
to get a
giving me
cold.
COVID.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And
I'll take
it
it.
doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean
Right.
anything. And we have the stigma on all of those STIs, like the ones that are more managed over life, like herpes or HIV, but there's no death sentence.
Right.
And there's cures for some of them and there's maintenance for others. And it just comes with the territory.
And many people have them, or how
Yeah.
come? I had a client the other day get gonorrhea,
Syphilis?
syphilis.
Gonorrhea?
Is that even around anymore? Whatever
Yeah.
it was, I was chlamydia. No, I was just shocked. I was like, I haven't heard anyone getting anything like that, like in a really long time. But
Yeah.
it's out there.
Yeah, they're all out there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is it very common, or?
There's more common ones than others. Herpes is very common. There's the herpes simplex 1, which is the cold sores, and then there's the genital herpes, which is herpes simplex 2. And that's super common. And usually it sits dormant in the system for a long time, and then they don't test for that unless you have an outbreak. So you could have it and never have an outbreak.
Oh wow.
And then also you could have an outbreak, and then never have another one, like it's,
Wow.
and then you don't, like, safe sex around that is like talking and communicating with your partner and then not having sexual relations during an outbreak unless you're doing like just kissing or any other type of sex that isn't penetration or oral sex.
What do you think
yeah.
about the Long Island serial killer?
Who's that?
Girl. Oh, Dr. Robinson.
I know Ted Bundy.
So basically, this guy just got, and I talked about it on last week's episode. So this guy just finally got caught. It's been like 10 years since they found these bodies of all these sex workers on Long Island. There was I think they found 10 bodies altogether, but 4 of them for sure they think was like at least him.
Oh, no.
So he was an architect, New York City, Fifth Avenue, lived in the suburbs, was married, had 2 kids. Like massive dude, right? 59 years old, threw away a pizza box. They got his DNA off a crust that he didn't eat, which is how you probably know he's a serial killer, because who does that? Okay. So they got his DNA from that, and then they caught his ass. But his thing is he liked to torture them, and he was very sadistic, and he had these photos of these people all beat up.
Oh my goodness.
What is that? That drives me. That's
like a
fucked
Ted
up, right?
Bundy.
Yeah. It's like a Ted Bundy.
Jeffrey Dahmer and
Right.
those things. So
And how can he be so normal?
Yeah.
I know you don't know the whole
no,
case, but does his wife
absolutely.
know? His wife must have known something. Not that he was a serial killer, maybe, but that he wasn't.
oh my gosh, this goes into far more than sex, but mental, as far as me, let me just disclaimer, I watch true crime. I've
Okay.
studied a little psychology and social working, and I know about personality disorders. So a lot of these people have personality disorders, which is essentially how do I describe a personality disorder? It's like your personality and the core of who you are is harmful either towards yourself or towards someone else. Oh, wow. And there's different
And that's a natural
personalities.
thing, the way you were born.
Yeah. So
Okay.
they might be narcissist, the narcissistic personality disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And those people are really, really self-centered. They don't have empathy for other people. They have an agenda, and their agenda is all about them. And then if they are threatened, they lash out very hard,
Wow.
in different ways. A lot of political people have narcissistic personality disorder because that's just the name of the game.
You have to lie to everybody every day.
Yeah. And so people who are like that may have antisocial personality disorder, which is an amplification of no empathy, none. Usually these people start hurting animals at a young age. I don't know if that guy did.
I don't know.
They just, I don't know. There's just part of them that are really charming and they're really good at what they do. They fit in with society.
Right. He was very successful as an architect,
And
but his
he's
house looked like
functioning.
crap. And I'm like, did he like that his house looked like crap? Forcing his wife to live there and not a nice home, even though they could. Is that
It's
all
like
part of seeing someone
masking.
suffering?
Yeah, it's like masking, people fake who they are all the time. And then when you go to their home, it's a completely different situation.
Right.
And then like people who are interested in like killing or murder, there's that theory that they were born like that, but then there's also people who have suffered tremendous amounts of trauma and that rewired their whole circuit, and that's where they go. Like I'm still trying to figure out Ted Bundy, but and Jeffrey Dahmer too.
You gotta look up this guy when you get out of here. You're gonna be
but
like,
it's interesting that he was focused on sex workers.
Right. And I read that 43% of serial killer killings are sex workers. And so that's like, they pretend like they don't matter, you know, and it's just, or like they're not going to say anything, and I just feel like those women, they really know what everyone's fantasy is, because everyone feels so comfortable with or some men feel very comfortable with a sex worker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And like, I think sex work is a great industry. I think it's amazing because people pay for that stuff.
Right.
And then there's facets of the sex work industry that are really helpful, like sex therapy. It's not necessarily sex work, but I'm in the field, right, of human sexuality. There's sex surrogates, who are professional people who help people who are learning how to have sex. Like they actually, they touch their clients. It's a whole treatment protocol. It's really, really cool. Then there's people who create adult content, and, you know, it's entertaining. Like,
yes, sure.
People will buy sex. And I think it's needed also for people who feel super lonely and are trying to explore who they are or anything really like that. But interestingly, I feel like maybe these people, these serial killers, think that it's easy access to a pattern or a type of person that they're interested in.
Right.
And then they go for it.
Right.
Which is so sad.
So sad. We only have a few minutes. You have to come back on another day.
Sure.
We got so much stuff to talk about. But, you know, a lot of the people...
It always ends up like this.
A lot of people that watch this show, they are in recovery. Some of them are in early recovery. So before you go, I was just wondering, like, jumping from using drugs and having that kind of lifestyle sexually and everything else to being sober for the first time and having to have those experiences without any of those lubricants. Like, do you have any suggestions on how they can feel more comfortable or confident?
It's so hard because like the drug or the alcohol really just hides that part of us that thinks, the inner critic. It like releases the inner critic and it helps you feel good. But like my suggestion would probably be get clear on what your desires are and get confident in who you are before you start having sex. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, ask the people that you're having sex with or trying to get in a relationship with, like how they operate. I'm one of those people that front loads literally everything to everyone. And I don't have shame about it because it helps me. Right. It helps my boundaries.
And you mean by telling them everything up front. This is what I'm looking for. This is what I like. This is what I don't like.
Yep. Because you weed out the bad people.
Totally.
Right away.
I spent a year single, and this was a long time ago, but I had not the best picker. So I had written a list, perfect man, this is like what I'm looking for. But obviously we have like 6 minimum, and I'm like 19 at the time, 20 years old. I got sober at 18. So I'm like going through all these life changes very young. Okay. So I'm like, well, obviously they need to have a fucking job, right? A car, a phone, not live with their mom, like, you know, basics. You need to be a person. Okay. I need you to be a person. But they would come up to me and random, you know, gentlemen trying to ask me on a date, very nice, but I'm like, do you have these things? I would ask them right up front. And if they said no, I'd be, I'm not really interested. Yeah. I'm not going to waste your time or my time because no. Right. And I remember this guy yelling at me for being like, you're looking for whatever. And I'm like, I'm looking for someone who has the same things I have and is willing to grow. Like, I'm not trying to like go backwards at this point. Like, how can you yell at me, bitch? Get a job. What?
Insecure.
It's craziness. But I like that.
Yeah, no, I want to say, like, if someone's going to shame you for doing that, then they're not the one for you. And then I also want to say there is, like, getting clear on why and your intentions around sex, especially sober. Like, are you wanting to feel the pleasure and have juicy hot sex with really attractive people? Because you can totally do that and go into those situations that way. Or are you looking to like be in longer term relationships or just find connection and, you know, the sensual, intimate side of it.
Right.
And then you go in like that. So like
Totally.
that helps, like being really clear on what you want and your desires and your needs and just putting it all out there and knowing that you are supported. Like you have your higher power, you have your friends, your family, your pets. If you have any pets, like you are supported and you're going to be okay.
Totally. I love it. What a good note to end on, Dr. Robinson. You have been fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Of course.
Back alley chat with us and hang out. And for you all at home watching, I love you all so much. If you have any questions, comment them down below. Maybe next time she comes on, she can answer them, or maybe she'll answer them on her Instagram for you guys. You know, something fun. Get her back into content creation. Love you all so, so much. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.